Amelia, I have a quick question for you before we begin. What's the one English skill you think opens the most doors for learners?
Oh, that's a good one, James. Let me think. I'd have to say asking questions. Seriously, once you can ask simple questions, the whole world of English conversation just opens up to you.
I knew you'd say that. You look so excited about this topic.
I am. It's such a fundamental skill, And it's not as difficult as many students think. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Learning English Studio.
Hello, everyone. It's great to have you with us. I'm James.
And I'm Amelia. Today, we're diving into something that might seem basic, but is absolutely essential for your English journey: how to ask simple questions in English.
That's right. But before we jump in, we'd love it if you could subscribe to our channel if you haven't already, and hit that like button. Sharing our podcast with your friends also helps us reach more English learners like you.
It really does make a difference and helps us keep creating content that supports your learning. So, James, are you ready to explore the wonderful world of English questions with me?
Absolutely. Let's get started.
Perfect. So let's begin with why asking questions is so crucial for English learners. I mean, think about it. Questions are how we learn, how we connect with people, how we navigate new situations.
That's so true. Questions are like the keys that unlock conversations. Without them, we're just waiting for others to engage with us. But when we can ask questions, we become active participants in any conversation.
Exactly. And I think many learners feel anxious about asking questions because they're worried about making mistakes with grammar or pronunciation.
Oh, definitely. I've seen so many students hold back from asking questions because they're afraid of sounding stupid or wrong. But here's the thing, native speakers make mistakes when asking questions all the time.
That's such an important point. And honestly, most people are so focused on what they want to say that they barely notice small mistakes in your questions. They're just happy you're engaging with them.
Exactly. So let's start with the most basic type of questions, yes-no questions. These are probably the easiest to form and understand.
Right. And the structure is pretty straightforward. You just start with an auxiliary verb like do, does, did, is, are, was, were, can, will, would, and so on.
That's right. For example, do you like coffee? Or is she coming to the party? Or can you help me? These are all simple yes-no questions that are incredibly useful in everyday conversations.
And what's great about these questions is that they require minimal vocabulary, but can still get you so much information. You can check understanding, confirm plans, express interest in someone, and so much more.
That's so true. Let me share a little story. When I was first learning English, I remember being at a restaurant and being too scared to ask the waiter anything. I just pointed at things on the menu.
Oh no, that must have been quite an experience. What changed for you?
Well, I finally mastered a few simple yes-no questions like, is this spicy? Or do you have vegetarian options? Suddenly, dining out became so much less stressful and more enjoyable.
That's such a perfect example of how just a few simple questions can completely transform an experience. And the thing is, even if your grammar isn't perfect, people will understand what you mean.
Absolutely. If you say, you have vegetarian, instead of, do you have vegetarian options, the waiter will still understand what you're asking. Communication is about connection, not perfection.
I love that. Communication is about connection, not perfection. That's such a beautiful way to put it, and it's so true.
Now, another type of simple questions that are really useful are information questions, the ones that start with WH words like who, what, where, when, why, and how.
Oh, these are game changers. Once you master these, you can get so much specific information. What time is it? Where is the bathroom? When does the movie start? These are essential questions for navigating daily life.
That's exactly right. And the structure is also quite simple. WH word plus auxiliary verb plus subject plus main verb. For example, what do you do? Or where does he live? Or when did they arrive?
And I think it's helpful for learners to know that in informal English, we sometimes drop the auxiliary verb, like what you doing instead of what are you doing, or where you going instead of where are you going.
That's such an important point. While it's good to learn the correct grammar first, understanding these informal variations will help you understand native speakers better.
Absolutely. And I think it's worth mentioning that intonation is really important in questions. Rising intonation at the end of yes-no questions, and typically falling intonation at the end of WH questions.
That's so true. And it's something that often gets overlooked in traditional language classes. But the right intonation can make your questions sound much more natural and polite.
Exactly. And politeness is another important aspect of asking questions. Simple words like please, excuse me, or could you tell me can make such a difference.
Oh, definitely. Where is the station is fine, but excuse me, could you please tell me where the station is? Sounds much more polite and will likely get you a friendlier response.
That's such a great example, and I think it's helpful for learners to know that English speakers tend to use more indirect questions when being polite, especially with strangers or informal situations.
That's so true. Instead of what's your name, we might say, could I ask your name? Or instead of how much does this cost, we might say, how much is this, please? Or could you tell me the price of this?
And these small adjustments make such a difference in how you're perceived. It shows respect and consideration for the person you're speaking with.
Exactly. And the good news is that you don't need to learn complex grammar to be polite. Just a few simple phrases can make all the difference.
So true. Now, I'm curious, James, what do you think is the most common mistake English learners make when asking questions?
That's a good question. I think it's probably word order, putting the subject before the auxiliary verb, like saying, you like coffee instead of do you like coffee, or where you live instead of where do you live.
Oh, that's so true. And the interesting thing is that even though the grammar might be wrong, people usually understand what you're trying to ask from the context and intonation.
Exactly. And I think that's reassuring for learners to know. Your questions don't have to be grammatically perfect to be effective.
That's such an important point. And I think another challenge for learners is knowing which question word to use. Sometimes they mix up when and where, or who and what.
That's so true. And it's helpful to remember that when is about time, where is about place, who is about people, what is about things or actions, why is about reasons, and how is about methods or ways.
That's a great summary, and I think it's helpful for learners to practice these question words in context, rather than just memorizing them in isolation.
Absolutely. Context is everything in language learning, and the more you practice asking real questions in real situations, the more natural these question words will become.
So true. Now, let's talk about tag questions, which are another useful type of simple questions. You know, like, it's a beautiful day, isn't it? Or, you like coffee, don't you?
Oh, tag questions are so useful. They're great for confirming information you think you already know, and they're also a nice way to keep a conversation going.
Exactly, and they're pretty easy to form, too. You just take a statement, add a comma, and then add a short question with the opposite auxiliary verb. If the statement is positive, the tag is negative, and if the statement is negative, the tag is positive.
That's right. Like, you're coming to the party, aren't you? Or, she doesn't like coffee, does she? And the intonation is interesting too. If you're really asking a question, your voice goes up at the end. But if you're just making conversation and expect agreement, your voice goes down.
That's such an important point about intonation, and tag questions are so common in everyday English conversation, but they're rarely taught in detail in many English courses.
That's so true. And I think learners sometimes feel overwhelmed by all the different types of questions. But the good news is that you don't need to master them all at once.
Absolutely. Start with the most common and useful ones for your specific needs. If you're traveling, focus on questions like, where is? How much is? What time does? If you're making friends, focus on questions like, do you like? What do you think about? How do you feel about?
That's such great advice. Tailor your question learning to your specific needs and interests. That makes learning more relevant and memorable.
Hey there, lovely listeners. Welcome back to Learning English Studio, your friendly space for mastering English one conversation at a time. I'm Amelia, and I'm absolutely thrilled to have you join us today.
Hi, Amelia, and hello to everyone tuning in. It's James here, and I'm excited for our chat today.
Hi, James. It's always such a pleasure having you with us. How are you feeling today?
I'm doing wonderfully, thank you. I can see you're practically glowing with excitement today. What's got you so cheerful?
Well spotted. I'm just genuinely excited about our topic today because it's something every English learner needs to master. How to agree and disagree naturally in English conversations. It's such a crucial skill, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely. It's one of those things that can make or break a conversation. Knowing how to express agreement or disagreement politely is like having a superpower in English.
Exactly. Before we dive in, though, I'd like to ask our wonderful listeners to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, and please share our podcast with your friends who are learning English too. Your support helps us keep creating content that makes learning English enjoyable and accessible. All right, James, are you ready to explore the art of agreeing and disagreeing in English?
More than ready. Let's jump right in.
Perfect. So let's start with the basics. When it comes to agreeing in English, there are so many ways to do it, right? We have simple agreements, strong agreements, partial agreements. The list goes on.
That's so true. And what's interesting is how the choice of words can show the level of enthusiasm or certainty in someone's agreement. For instance, a simple "I agree" is quite different from "I couldn't agree more."
Oh, absolutely. And I think learners often struggle with knowing which expressions to use in different situations. Sometimes they might come across as too formal or too casual without realizing it.
That's such a good point. I remember when I was learning, I once used "I concur" in a casual conversation with friends, and they looked at me like I was from another planet.
Oh my goodness, I can just imagine that. "I concur" does sound a bit like something you'd hear in a courtroom rather than at a coffee shop with friends.
Exactly, and that's why it's so important to understand the different levels of formality in English expressions for agreement and disagreement.
So true. Let's start with some common, everyday ways to agree that would work in most casual situations. Things like, "I think so too," "That's true," or "You're right about that."
Yes, those are perfect, and we can make them even more natural by adding little expressions like, "Yeah, I think so too," or "Oh, that's so true." These little additions make the conversation flow much better.
Oh, I love that you mentioned those little additions. They really do make a difference. And what about stronger agreements, when you really, really agree with someone?
For stronger agreements, we have expressions like "I completely agree," "Absolutely," "You're absolutely right," or my favorite, "I couldn't agree more."
"I couldn't agree more" is such a great one. It's so expressive and really shows enthusiasm. I think it's one of those phrases that when learners master it, they feel like they've really leveled up in their English.
Definitely. And there's also, "That's exactly how I see it," or "You've hit the nail on the head." These are more idiomatic, but so natural once you get the hang of them.
Oh, "hit the nail on the head" is a fantastic idiom. It really paints a picture, doesn't it? Like someone precisely identifying the core of an issue.
Exactly. And that's the beauty of English expressions. They often have these wonderful visual elements that make them memorable.
So true. Now, what about partial agreement? Because sometimes we don't completely agree with someone, but we don't want to completely disagree either. That's a tricky area for many learners.
Oh, absolutely. Partial agreement is such an important skill. It's about finding that middle ground where you can acknowledge the other person's point while still expressing your own perspective.
Right, and it's so useful in maintaining good relationships, both personal and professional. No one likes to be told they're completely wrong all the time.
Exactly. Some great expressions for partial agreement include "I see your point, but," or "That's partly true, however," or "I agree with you to some extent, but."
Those are perfect examples. And I think the "but" or "however" is crucial here because it signals that you're about to introduce your differing perspective.
That's so true. And there are softer ways to do it too, like "I understand where you're coming from, but have you considered," which is really gentle and respectful.
Oh, I love that one. "I understand where you're coming from" shows empathy and acknowledges the other person's perspective before you introduce your own. It's such a diplomatic way to partially disagree.
Absolutely. And it's perfect for situations where you want to maintain a good relationship while still expressing your own opinion.
Now, let's shift gears a bit and talk about disagreeing. This can be really challenging for English learners because they don't want to sound rude or confrontational.
Oh, definitely. Disagreeing in a second language can feel so risky. You're worried about choosing the wrong words and accidentally offending someone.
Exactly. And that's why it's so important to learn the right phrases and intonation. The way you say something can be just as important as what you say.
That's so true. For gentler disagreements, we have expressions like, "I'm not sure I agree with that," or "I see it differently," or "I have a different perspective on this."
Those are great. And I think adding "I'm afraid" can soften it even more. Like, "I'm afraid I don't quite agree," or "I'm afraid I see it differently."
Oh, that's a wonderful tip. The "I'm afraid" really adds a layer of politeness and shows that you're not trying to be difficult.
That's so true. And we'd also love it if you'd rate our podcast. It really helps new listeners discover us. Well, that's all the time we have for today, but we'll be back next week with another helpful episode to support your English learning journey.
Until then, keep practicing, keep learning, and remember that every question you ask is a step toward fluency and confidence in English. Thanks for listening, everyone.
Thanks for joining us, everyone. This is Amelia from Learning English Studio, signing off. Happy learning, and we'll see you next time.
Bye for now.
Before we go, we have a little fun activity for you all today. We'd love to know which of these situations you find most challenging when asking questions in English. Asking questions to strangers or people in authority, like teachers or bosses. Asking questions in a group setting, like in a classroom or meeting. Asking questions when you're not sure about the grammar or vocabulary. Let us know in the comments which one you find trickiest and why. We'll be reading your responses and might even address some common concerns in future episodes. Can't wait to hear from you all. Wave!